Welcome back to the Tree Surgeons podcast. This is the first interview of many that we've got coming up, and I've got Tom Boswell from Tom's Boswell Tree Services. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. So tell me, your business started in 2005. You're based around London predominantly, but before you started your business, how did you get into tree work? Where was your beginnings?
I think my story is probably quite similar to yours in many ways, actually. So I'm from quite a rural setting. I'm from the West Country, a little town called Newent, Forest of Dean. I went to school there, did my sixth form there, did my A-levels, or didn't do my A-levels, more importantly.
Yeah.
So I ended up with a C after that schooling, and history, I think it was. So I didn't do particularly well at school. It wasn't really for me. My mum and dad are both teachers, actually. So I should have done a lot better, but I didn't. Like most people in our industry, actually, and probably in our position, you find that school was just not for you. It wasn't for me. I can look back on that and say some of that was definitely my fault, and some of that's also the way schooling is set up as well, and how you learn as well. I know you've spoken a lot about how you learn at stages of life and stuff.
It doesn't really work for a lot of people, the schooling system. I think if you're very academic, then great, you fly through it. But like as soon as you're not, my experience was certainly just being like, well, you're not going to get us a good grade, so we're not going to focus any time on you. More like, and I didn't want to focus that time. So accountability, it was a bit of both, but the schooling system doesn't really work. And I see that so much in this industry of people that weren't academic and then they go out and try something else.
Well, why have we done the route that we do? So many tree surgeons, neurodiversity is massive, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what the actual kind of metric to it is, all the numbers and stuff, but so many of people we deal with in tree surgery, they didn't do well at school and they found themselves in this job because it's freedom, it's been outside, it's working with your hands. You get a product at the end of it. You start the day with a bunch of guys or girls, go out and do a job, and you get at the end of it, you can sit down and say, I did that. That tree is now from this big to that big, or it's gone, or that was dangerous. It produces stuff, which is nice, and that's a good feeling about it, and that's why people start it a lot of the time. And for me, that section of school wasn't too great. I wasn't unhappy, but I didn't thrive. Anyway, after school, what I did a load of sort of short jobs. I worked in a wine warehouse, I worked as a hospital porter. I did pretty much every job you can do, really. I really wanted to be a paramedic. My eyesight's not particularly good. In those days, they had quite set criteria. So I went and did some work experience with them and then got through to the interview stages, and I couldn't really do that in the end for that time. These days, you can get into the paramedics with a different sort of set of criteria. It's a bit late now, I'm 45 and I'm not so desperate to come back. They did a really tough job. What did I do after that? I went off to Merris Wood actually to do the 10-week tree surgery course. Do you know if that's still running?
I'm not sure. Was Andy Pinder there when you did it?
The name rings a bell. Jack Kenyon.
Yeah, Jack Kenyon. I know he's gone now.
Yeah, so he was quite a legend. I didn't get taught a lot by him. I got taught by other guys there. Chris, who I think he was teaching there, he was really good. But that course was good. It covered everything you wanted it to cover. It set you on your way. It was almost a dangerous course because you left and you just thought you could conquer the world.
Yeah, that's the thing. And we see it in this industry all the time. All the tickets, but no experience. Yeah. Experience only comes when you're doing the job, right?
So I'd only had a 6-month work placement of a local company in Herefordshire, going around doing kind of really big sort of oak cutbacks and stuff. And no real pruning works, just kind of that branch needs to come off, that branch comes off sort of thing, using tractors and all sorts of stuff. So I hadn't really had a lot of kind of finesse in terms of tree work, and I went back to my mum and dad's place in my sort of early 20s after doing this course, and I did some shocking tree work to the trees around Gloucestershire. There's still trees today which I go and look at, and I see this skeletal sort of cherry, and I'm like, yep, I did that. But at the time, that customer was like, you did a great job there. So I did quite a lot of damaging tree work for 3 or 4 years. And I thought, I need to get better at this. I'm not going forward. So I came to London, and a bit like your story, actually. I think you went to, was it City and Suburban?
Yeah.
I went to a company called Tree Care, so probably rivals at the time.
Yeah.
But Tree Care was, it was a lot of fun, a bit like your story, a lot of highs, a lot of stories which I can't really repeat.
No, but London kind of consumes you quite a lot, doesn't it? It's a
like,
fast life, isn't it?
Yeah,
very
definitely.
Fast life.
It was great for 5 or 6 years. I met with a big number of Kiwis work there as well.
Yeah, I experienced that. Loads of Aussies, loads of Kiwis. They're
great to work with.
Yeah,
they don't panic about stuff. They don't really care about pruning that much because they don't have to do it. But they also don't get particularly. They're pretty much unflappable. So you get a lot of confidence climbing with people like that.
Yeah.
I also had a lot of sort of local lads, the West London estates and stuff. People I wouldn't have grown up with necessarily. But they were great fun. They worked hard. They were sort of super cheeky. There was a lot of banter. It was fun. I did that for 5 years. I worked my way up to kind of on the edge of team leader, medium climber. But between me and you, I'm not a phenomenal climber, and I never have been. I'm okay. I get the job done. I work hard. But from those sort of early days, I could see I wanted to do tree work or a business in a different way. And that's no slight in the company. It was just I thought I could probably do this better if I apply myself. I could do something on my own. I wanted my own company actually. So that's where kind of TBTS was born, really, with a BT, ex-BT wagon and an NTEC chipper, and I felt like I was king of the world. So probably pretty similar to yours, actually, I would have thought.
Yeah, very similar. Mine was a red TP 150 and
right,
a red Transit. So you went and decided to start your own business. Was it always the plan to start your own business, or is that just something as you got into the tree surgery industry you thought,
I think I'm a really bad employee, actually. I wouldn't employ me. I was always entitled. I'd go and climb something. I'd get up a big plane and do half of it. And I'd be like, I should be on the top climber. I should be doing that, I would have been tricky to manage, actually. And it's been a good lesson for me in managing others, actually, because I sometimes see that in other people. Sometimes one of the guys might come back, one of the second climbers or one of the trainees, and they'll be like, I've just done that. So did that the other week. And it's a fair question to ask, but you've got to see where the kind of process takes you a bit, really. And I was so impatient. So I wasn't easy to manage. And I just wanted everything straight away. I thought I was better than I was. So I think the business evolving over the last 10, 15 years, I've definitely slowed down. I've definitely appreciated maybe not rushing into situations, not reacting so much. And that means I can probably coach some of the younger lads a bit better, or just not react when there's... You must have it with your company as well. If you react straight away, then you can almost like make the wrong decision too quickly. It might sound decisive, but actually if you've just to give yourself time with these big decisions, slow it down a bit.
You've got to take a step back, haven't you? Because in the moment, especially in our industry, when there's a lot of adrenaline, ego, there's guys get back from site and they've had a hard day, they've been pumped, they might be on a bit of a downer from their adrenaline, and stuff comes out, and it's, you're right, like sometimes just taking a step back and not reacting. Because I've had it before where we've had guys squaring up to us, and before you know it, you've said one thing and it's just triggered, and
it's got to that stage, you're like, what has happened?
It's tough. So going back to 2005, obviously 3 years before the big Northern Rock crash, because I started in 2008. How did you find starting out?
Probably similar to you, just very big little wins, little losses at the same time. But I just remember it being a bit of a hustle in those days. And I just remember it. I remember going around flyering people. I remember getting some flyers printed, and I lived in a shared house in Ealing. And my housemates were super supportive, and I said, I'll buy you all Sunday lunch if we go and spend 3 hours flying in Ealing. Ended up with 20 calls from that. Probably messed up those calls and didn't book an appointment or turned up late or did all the mistakes that you make. But I generated some leads from that, and it was just keeping busy, really. And in those days, if it's just you and a truck and a chipper, all you're thinking about is, I get 2 or 3 decent days this week, I'm covered. I can pay my bills, I can pay this, I can pay that. And you're not really thinking about growth in any of those stages. You're just thinking about, it's a bit survival, but I over-dramatise it. Survival is something different. But as a business, I don't know about you, but what's your biggest fear in business? I know what mine is. What do you think your biggest fear is that might happen?
I think it's like, from where I lost it all before, I think that the biggest fear is that happening again and growing either too fast or too quickly. We've just gone for a huge contract, and there's part of me that wants to win it, but there's also another part of me that where we've got 4 teams, 5 teams now, we've got a really nice feel, really nice culture, that almost I'm like, do I want to then go to anywhere bigger than this, because I've experienced running 47 staff. So I think but that reason why we go for that contract is the biggest fear has probably been from day one, has been running out of work and literally having to turn up and have nothing in the diary. And we got close to that this summer. It was a really tense summer, wasn't it?
Yeah, same as. I mean, going back to the biggest fear for me, the same as what you've been through, actually. It's the thought of having something and then like that business having to fold or that business having to close down. And it's super admirable that your attitude, you were the right person to fail. You bounce back and you bounce back stronger. I'm not sure I would have done that quite so capably, actually, because I was probably a lot more emotional in those days. I was a lot more like, my business is me, and if that business fails, then I failed. And it's all that kind of like sort of talk about kind of like, you can't do this, you're not worthy of that, We all have it.
Oh, 100%. I went on this weekend away to a business retreat, and a lot of it was about that inner talk and our self-confidence. And I think as business owners, we all have that kind of, sometimes the imposter syndrome, but also I think maybe I was the right guy, but I think maybe I wasn't, because most people, when they're put in a state of failure point, like you've got two options: either go and hide under a rock or go and make some money. And I know you've got a family, and like suddenly you've got this pressure to provide, and there was only for me only one option, and that was to sort of pick myself up and go again. And I think if anyone was put in that, or I'd like to think if most people were put in that position, they would do the same, and I think you would too.
Yeah, I hope so. And I've had moments where I've been like, I could really take a PAYE job now. I've known enough people.
But that unemployable Tom.
Obviously, they don't hear this podcast. So but yeah, I know what you mean. I could easily, especially around COVID times, because we were in the middle of London. We went down the furlough scheme. No judgment on any people that did or didn't. We did it for us as a business. It was the right thing to do. But I remember stopping and thinking a few times there, and I was thinking, this is a really tough time. And tough times make people, don't they, as well? And thankfully, I came out of that, and we made some really good decisions. I've got a fantastic business partner in Rob, who you've met as well. So his support, family support. Actually, the guys at the time, a lot of them aren't with us now, but they were really good. They wanted to get back to work. We didn't have that many bad behaviours, to be honest with you. Most guys were just right on our side because they know it's a job, and they enjoy the job, they enjoy the company. And we did weekly sort of welfare checks with them when we weren't working. So we'd have a Zoom call on a Wednesday afternoon, which I'd host, and we'd get them all talking about stuff and what they've been up to. And then they posted a load of clips of doing their sort of exercise in the garden and stuff. So we stuck that on Instagram and stuff. And it definitely generated a good feeling there in a bad situation. So I know COVID's it did make and break lots of people. We're very lucky, I think, from what you said before, in terms of was I affected business wise. Some of that we had a lot of work after, had a lot of stress during it, but actually first and foremost, our family did not suffer the way some families suffered. So we should be very grateful of that, and I am still grateful that lots of people went through COVID and it was a massively different experience. We had quite a few guys working for our company who live on their own, and they found that a particularly lonely time.
Yeah, it's tough to be alone.
Really tough. And their life was going travelling, going to gigs, going all around London, seeing people, and then next thing you're stuck in a flat, it's winter, when's this going to end, sort of thing. So I don't want to sort of spook any listeners out there, but that's
no, it was a tough time, I think, and some people had a great time, some people had a bad time. And the way I've always explained COVID is my nan, we used to take her when she was alive, we used to take her for dinner every week, and she used to talk about how she used to have a good war, because she used to go dancing in London. She met my grandpa, hence why I've got a Dutch name, because he came over, and she used to say to me, I had a good war. And we used to be thinking, how can you have a good war? But like COVID, it was like our version of the war, right? Because it was one of the biggest changes in life. And
she's being honest as well, isn't she?
So some people had a good COVID, and some people had a tragically bad COVID. Like people in the war lost people in COVID lost people. And I think people had good or bad times, and I think it's just different for a lot of people. So obviously, I've got to know you and Rob and some of your team over the last 12 months have been on the mastermind. And one thing that struck me is the culture that you've managed to create in your business. Meeting Rob, one of your guys came and sat on the course as well at Matt, and I could just that there was always just such a good feeling about your company, about the culture and how you've brought that team together. So is that something that accidentally happened? Is that something that you've decided, or how did you come about creating that really good feel culture?
I think it's probably addressing it to start off with, because I didn't know what culture was until a couple of years ago. I thought it was something to do with yogurts, and that was about as far as it goes. I was kind of like, what does culture mean? So we definitely looked at what sort of company we want. I looked at what company I want to be part of, what makes me proud, and probably the same things that make you proud about your company. It's about professionalism. It's about your staff members going above and beyond. It's about a fantastic customer experience. When people phone us up or they drop us an email and they said, I had a brilliant experience with your company, you've been a delight to do. That's one of the nicest things you can hear, because it's not necessarily naming an individual, which is nice in itself, but it's your company went above and beyond. So it's that kind of pride. How do you go about instilling that or getting that? Well, I think it starts with recruitment, actually. It starts with who you recruit and how you do it as well. And this is an ongoing process it should be for every company, shouldn't it? How you recruit, how you onboard, how you make people start. If you leave to go to another company, people kind of like, oh, you're not very loyal. That's the wrong language. Loyal's turning up, doing your job every day and giving it the best you can. If you choose to go somewhere else, you're a free agent, but you've got to fulfill your contract. And one of the guys comes to me and they say, I'm not very happy and I feel we're going forward and we can't do any more for them. they come to us and say, oh, here's 4 weeks notice, I've had a great time, and we'll help them do whatever they do next. We'll give them all their certificates, we'll maybe even give them time off to go and attend an interview if to make it a good leaving situation. So it's probably little shades of culture there really, and it all kind of bleeds into the same thing. But what have we done kind of like actively to make culture better? Probably communication's been a big thing. I know you talk a lot about that, but we took some of your advice of the day actually, which was about toolbox talks. And you said it's always good to have one of the directors or the boss do a toolbox talk. So I made a point over the last couple of weeks of doing the odd toolbox talk to assist Pepe, the operations manager. Rob's done quite a few as well. And although we've got to be careful we don't do every toolbox talk, because the expectation, and also Pepe's got his job to do, he needs the respect of the guys as well. But actually, it's been really helpful. We've got some quick stuff done, quick fixes. We've listened to them when times have been hard. We've gone back with a you said we did document. So they've told us something. We've chatted about it as a group, and we've gone back and said, well, we can't do this now. So we're going to have to close that conversation down, but we can do this sort of thing. So, and having like being listened to by teams of blokes who don't talk very, they often kind of like hold things in. I don't know what your guys are like. You have your team leaders and your sort of toolbox talks go. How do you find them?
So it's an evolving thing, and I think that the more that we do them, the more we get out from people. I think the biggest frustration is when we do a staff survey and we do the toolbox talks, is when people are saying stuff and as you say, like got a dialogue with them. We can't do this, but we can do this. I think it's when you're asking people stuff and then you're just asking it, you're getting the information and then you're doing nothing with it, and then they can't see it evolving. But like you say, I think my biggest mistake over the last couple of years until the beginning of this year is that I actually left my tree surgery business too much to other people to run. And then I started to come in once a month and doing a toolbox talk. And I don't do every single one. Tom does the team leader talks every week, or Mike does. But certainly I come in and have that conversation. And as I do it more, or as a team do communicate more, the guys are opening up, and not everyone talks. We tend to have like one or two who tend to like talk to everybody, and then they've got the confidence to say what they want. But I think you're right, like the communication is key, because you know what it's like when you're working with someone. I know what it's like to work with someone. If you don't know what's going on in the management, you then create this divide between them and us. And it's like the site team versus the management team. And they're like, well, they don't know what the site team are like. They don't know what it's like to do our job. And then the management team are like, oh, they don't know what it's like to do our job. And then you just create this divide. And that's where the communication is absolutely key, isn't it?
So I think that's where we as leaders can add the most value there. So yourself, me, Rob, I mean, doing those toolbox talks intermittently, but when they do go in, making sure you're facilitating a really good conversation. And like you say, you often get the same people who do mention stuff, but actually bring other people into that conversation. Maybe the quiet ones that kind of sit at the back and kind of wait until it's all over. So I do try and sort of bring them in straight away, not in a kind of like, you need to speak, but like, what are your thoughts about that? Because you mentioned this in the week. The guys asked me to go on site the other day, which I still need to honour actually. I'm very happy about going on site, but it's also one of those things, not the best use of my time, but I think there's a bit of a need for me to see what's going on site. So I will do that, and that's going to be the next couple of weeks. So that's an easy fix there as well, so we can all better understand each other. But going back to the conversations, I think good conversations are like fundamental for running a company actually, and picking and choosing your moments and stuff, and when not to speak as well. It's more powerful to know when just to hold back a little bit. I used to jump in all the time. We got a couple of WhatsApp groups, team leader, general company and stuff with all the on-site guys. And in the old days, I'd almost start policing those things. I'd be like, well, maybe you want to do like... I was like, I'm looking at this all the time. And now I haven't had to say anything other than just a thumbs up or great work or send us a picture of that. It looks like you've done a really good job there. I shouldn't be the policeman of that. These are grown men and women, and they're all capable of managing their language and doing it their own way. And they always moderate themselves, which is great as well. So if somebody maybe takes the mick a bit too much, somebody else might just sort of check them in a little bit.
Level it up.
I can't even explain how they do it, but I don't have any big concerns about that.
And I think you've like what you just said then with like you say great work, well done. I think that is one of the key things as well to building a good culture, is just a bit of praise from time to time when they do it right. Like we have such an open book about, let's have a conversation on the side, not in a WhatsApp group if a job goes wrong, but if something goes right, to praise as well. And I remember going back when I first started, and bosses would be like, their kind of attitude would be like, your pay packets, your thanks. And I think we've just moved on from those kind of like old times where where like people do need like generations of change. You see it like I relate everything to football because I'm a big football fan, but Alex Ferguson used to do the hairdryer treatment, shouting at people, throwing a boot at David Beckham's head and whatever. And now the managers are more having to put their arm around players and check in with them. And I think that's the way the industry has evolved and generations have evolved now.
Is society. I think we've all got better at that, haven't we, really? I mean, not just tree work, but you probably go to building sites where the most successful ones are the ones where they listen to their employees or some of the people involved. But you're right, there's a time and a place for that kind of hairdryer treatment. There is a time when you just need to call it out and sort of say, like, that's completely unacceptable and I'm not happy about this. And you've obviously got the whole kind of disciplinary route, which has to be very formal. But there's also this whole kind of like just feedback, really, which we've got to do more as a company. We've got to give our team leaders more feedback when it goes well, when they need a bit of a kind of like, what's gone wrong there? Big thing I was doing recently, we did a bit of coaching. We had a bit of a discovery day with a coach, a business coach, actually. And he was kind of like, stop giving people, he didn't say this, he's a coach. He said, why don't you stop giving people answers, basically, and actually helping them find the solutions themselves. I'm very guilty of that. Someone will come to me with a problem and I'll basically say like, well, yeah, you should do this, you should do that. Why don't you do this? Why don't you? I'm not saying like, how do you think you should go about doing that? Well, what would you do? Giving people a bit of kind of advocate agency. So we're trying a lot harder with that.
Yeah, and I think because employees will generally want to get from A to B the quickest. And if A to B and B is giving you or Rob a call to say, my chipper's broke, and they've not even tried looking at it all, and you go, have you checked the sensor? Yeah, it's fixed. Then every time they're wired to phone you, aren't they? And that's what we've had it before where I've been sat with managers and the team's called up and I've said, we're in a meeting, call back in 20 minutes. And then he's called while I'm still there. And they're like, oh yeah, we fixed it now. Because it's just that kind of, but we make it as, because we're problem solvers, generally as leaders, as bosses, we've been there like at the beginning with your NTech chipper and your BT wagon, and you've had to fix that, you've had to fix it all, you've had to fix your topper, you've had to rebuild saws, you know it all. So when staff members or team members phone up, you just go, yep, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. And it makes it easier for them, but more difficult for the management team.
The longer you keep doing that, the more people will just be reliant on that. If they continually go back to it, they're not really learning, they're not thinking either. And people are way more, we don't give people enough credit. We've got some fantastic people, I mean, same as you, I'm sure, have as well. They're more than capable of working things out. I mean, these are all grown-ups. They've all been through the schooling system. They've all chosen to do this work. They've gone through an interview process. They've done their probation. They get it. We're just not always allowing them to sort of thrive as best they can.
Yeah, exactly. It's taking those shackles off and letting them make a few mistakes on the way, but they learn from those and they work it out. And
the fear to make a mistake, though, is big, isn't it?
It's huge.
Because so many people are so frightened of, is that going to be disciplinary? Am I going to get my money docked there? I don't think we've taken money out of people's wages for 7 or 8 years.
No, we haven't either.
And the only reason for that was real crazy.
It's a debate that always comes up on the mastermind all the time and on the WhatsApp group. People are always asking, and I've always said our opinion is we don't charge people, but that's purely because I feel like, and my fail forward background of everything is that if we charge people, we lose the learning from it. And we want to have an open, but yes, there's occasionally if someone's really negligent and they're just continuously making the same mistakes and we can see they're not learning, then that might be a charge. But generally it's what's learned from it. And as long as we can see that as a company learning, then we shouldn't need to go down that road where people are fearful of making mistakes.
Definitely. You don't want that team sort of climbing up and then saying, well, we're not going to say anything because that's grassing with our mates and stuff. What you really want them doing is saying like, yeah, you're right, that could have been done a bit differently and maybe you can sort of help us come up with the answer there. What should we have done? And then we can talk about it. But it's finding the time for these conversations, and we're all a bit guilty of not finding the time. You know?
We are. And I think when I started to do exactly what you just said then, which was asking the staff, I used to say, people would phone me up or Mike would phone me up, whoever would say, Henry, how do I do this? And I'd say, well, how would you do it? And at first I got a lot of resistance because I'd been the person to solve all the problems, and instantly people start saying to me, oh, sorry for bothering you. And I was like, whoa, you're not bothering me. And I had to start explaining to people and had to have a toolbox talk about what I was trying to do, which was trying to empower them. Because when I'd been doing the A to B and solving their problems for them, it was suddenly a big shift when I start saying, well, tell me how you would do it. But once I'd got that, quite often, especially the management team, Sophie, when she was with us, she'd phone me up and say, Henry, I've got this challenge. What I think is either A or B. I'm thinking probably A, but I just want to get your sign off on it. And 9 times out of 10, I'd go, yeah, A sounds great. go for it. And
that's
you're
a
like,
nice conversation,
yeah, it
isn't
is.
it? You've done the thinking. She's done the thinking for you already.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, you're right. You're just giving her a bit of validation,
Yeah,
you know?
and you just give that final sign off. Cool, you're good. Go
Yeah,
for it. And
yeah.
then the phone just slowly stopped ringing as much, like 100 times a day. It then goes down to like 10 times a day.
I do about a fifth of the quotes for our company. I don't get called that much actually, and I know that's partly because Rob does a fantastic job
Yeah,
dealing with
he's
a lot of
he's a
things.
top guy, Rob.
Yeah, he's brilliant actually. He's a bit younger. He's 34, I think. How old are you now?
40.
I'm 46, you see, so what was I doing at 34? I was not being as productive or as leadership-like as Rob.
Yeah,
or 40 for that matter. Yeah, so...
He's got his head screwed on, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. He's very sharp, very capable, and he always thinks of people's needs as well, which is lovely. He's kind of like, how would I feel if that happened to me? A thoughtful guy like that. So, and if you're going to manage people in a kind of empathetic way or a considerate way, if something happens to family members ill or something, he's always like, what can we do to help?
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You don't want people just counting the money all the time and going like, oh, it's another day lost. What sort of culture does that
and that creates the culture, and it creates the family feel. It creates that you've got a good bonded team. And like you say, like I think when my version of culture is very similar, and I always wanted to start a business that looked after its team, because I know what it's like to be on the other side of having a bosses that shout, scream, don't want to look after you and all that kind of stuff. And what I realized over trying to be a good boss and trying to create a good culture is whether it feels the right thing to do. It feels good to be part of a company that's good. But also, I actually think that a business that's got a great culture makes more money because people are more committed. They turn up more often. They have less sick days. They're generally not as late.
Absolutely,
they do the extra. They go the extra mile. If you've got a little job to do on the way home, a call out job, people say yes more than they say no. So even if someone's listening to this and they've got running a business, they're thinking, I don't buy into all that culture shit. Like it makes a lot better business in general. Not only does it feel good to be part of.
Yeah, and there are businesses out there where being super nice to people or just being understanding and reasonable. I mean, maybe in a different world, financial world, I don't know. I'm not too sure really, but that might be what they need to do for maybe certainly retail. I don't know. I'm not too sure really, but I know for our sort of people-centered businesses where you're dealing with reasonably big workforce, lots of clients, lots of interaction, communication, you've got to have those kind of interpersonal skills, and you've got to actually care about the people that are working with you and feel proud of the work they do, and you should tell them that, all those things as well. Having said that, and it's very important to do all that, you've also got to have your red lines as well, and I think we've probably clarified a few things. We've probably moved a few behaviours on maybe the last couple of years. We've got a few more, not consequences as such, but we're kind of like, well...
Boundaries.
It's got to work for the business as well, and we'll give as much as we can give in any situation, and there comes a point where you're like, I don't think that your lifestyle is compatible with this business. And those conversations are really helpful as well. I don't mean that in a negative way, but if you constantly say yes to everything, then you're not necessarily being fair to the guys that are doing what they're meant to be doing.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's getting that culture right. And I got it wrong 5-6 years ago before the business failed, where I was more yes to everything, and we were almost like mates. I was mates with most of my staff. We were too close. And then like what I realised is the part of having a good culture is everything we've talked about creating that bond and being able to look after your team, but also having the right boundaries in place. That if things are crossed, that you can have an adult conversation, not a shouting and screaming conversation, and those boundaries are in place. And also, like a lot of it, what I've learned this year is not only, I used to think having a good culture was maybe giving. So maybe like we used to give like meal vouchers, or we'd give a bonus, or we'd say thank you. And actually having a good culture is, as a management team, doing what you say you'll do, having good delivering, having good kit, making sure we are communicating, that the stuff's getting fixed, that it actually just having a fundamentally good management team that is like a well-oiled machine, like you want your teams to be, that doesn't create that divide. And I think that a lot comes into it. Yes, being a good, nice, caring boss with a bit of empathy is good, but also making sure that the company is being ran well.
You're absolutely right. I mean, if you're saying yes to everything, then you're not saying no to anything, which is bad for a start, because there's things you need to say no to. If someone asks you for 3 months off in the middle of the year unpaid, then you might have to say no to that, actually. You might have to be, that doesn't work for the business, we can't manage that. And actually being able to say no at the right time is quite a powerful thing, and no in a kind way as well. Like listen to what they're saying, but then also go, it doesn't work for the business. I'm sorry, we can't do that. Here's what we can do. So I completely agree. Having those boundaries, having those lines is really helpful. It's helpful for the rest of the guys for a bit of clarity as well. Because I say guys and girls, we've got back office staff of 5 employees as well. So it's just being fair across the board as well. So one rule for one, same for everybody. It's got to be within reason. Obviously, you get manager's discretion, but I mean, that needs to be a conversation and a thought process. It's not just like, oh, yeah, he's done a good job today. Well, you can go at 4 o'clock today rather than 5 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I completely agree. Having your consequences and boundaries and all those red lines, being as kind as you can be is a good way, and you will make money from that. I'm sure you will.
Yeah, 100% agree. So let's talk about this year specifically and the kind of the challenges in the industry. I know you felt the effects of our sort of 20 dip that a lot of people did in this industry. So what do you see the biggest challenge with the kind of feast and famine in our industry of summer bird nesting season, out of bird nesting season?
I think it's, like anything, it's a challenge. If we can find an answer to it, we will be ahead of the pack, and that's the exciting thing about it, because it is a challenge. We've had 3 or 4 months there, April onwards, and it was a real famine. I think you had the same thing.
We did, yeah.
And we had to make some tough decisions, and some of the decisions were like, do we keep this pool of subbies who are all fantastic and make us lots of money and do a great job, or are they the first to go? And we had to make a decision that we couldn't hold on to 6 or 7 subbies regularly. We had a few conversations about, can we hold on to a workforce of 12 on-site guys at the time? And we chose that the right thing to do, because we'd already invested in those new guys and they paid us back in droves. They've been fantastic. And we didn't go to them and say, well, guess what, we're making a decision. We kept that to ourselves. But we had some tough decisions, and I'm really pleased we stuck with what our gut feeling was. These are the right guys, things will pick up again. And lo and behold, come by the end of sort of August, September, the phone just hasn't stopped since then. I wish I had the answer. I wish I had a mixture of domestic, mixture of commercial, it's getting your diary sorted. It's all those things. The tap going off, I think the election probably played a part of that. I think the economy's worse than we're probably even thinking now, actually. People don't have a lot of disposable income. If they do, they're going on holiday or doing something else. They're not pruning trees.
Yeah, well, the staycation boom ended, and that's what I saw through COVID is that even though we didn't do a huge amount of domestic work, that every tree surgeon was busy through COVID, because people had excess money that was being thrown around by the government. There was the travelling restrictions, so people were spending a lot more time in their garden, and the industry was on steroids for 3 or 4 years. And pre-COVID, we always seemed to get this kind of summer lull, but this year was the worst I've known it almost since I began, where I think you're right, the election plus the recession.
The weather was crazy. I've never known weather like that. It must have been 3 months, and I'd say more days rain than didn't. And that's like through some of the longest days of the year, which you should be out getting 3 or 4 jobs done on a really good day. Yeah. And we were the guys were soaked all the time. The phone wasn't getting picked up, and that was probably the biggest sort of immediate challenge we've had, actually, and finding a way of navigating that. If we can work that out, and we're working on it now, but if we can find a way of a bit of consistency throughout the year, maybe a bit more commercial, focusing on that, maybe just a bit more kind of proactive calling of clients as well. And I'm not saying like do trees at the wrong time of year, but let's be honest, most trees can be pruned most of the year.
Yeah, they can.
Birds get in the way. It's only things like birches and cherries and walnuts you have to be a bit careful of. But actually, as a commercial company, we have to space the work out a lot better to keep our workforce in employment and keep everyone busy, keep the money coming in. It's that sort of game that we've got to play all the time. We might never master it, but we've got to keep trying.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a case of like when the times are good through winter, you make as much money as you can. So if you do have those tight times, that we used to do a lot of training through summer, but then the problem with that is you get people on holiday, people doing training, and then your revenue just drops completely out of the water. But then we get this other challenge, which we were talking about before we came on air, which is now we need more staff, more team members. And I was reading a post on the Tree Surgery Business Owners Facebook group this morning, and everyone's saying the same thing. There isn't a pool of people. Like 16 years ago when I started, the funny thing is that I was out of work for 2 or 3 months because there wasn't many tree surgery jobs, and there was more tree surgeons than there were jobs. And now we've got no tree surgeons and loads of jobs. So what are your plans? How are you trying to navigate bringing more people on?
So we were speaking about it just before I came in, actually, Henry, but apprenticeships we've looked at, we think they could be a fantastic thing, but we think we're going to struggle in our position at the moment to follow through with some of those, well, apprenticeship hurdles, I think. But I think we're going to go down the fast track route with people. We're going to do a quick onboarding. We're going to do a series of interviews. We're going to make sure that people are right for the company, first of all. And then we're going to look at training providers getting through their courses quickly so they're trained and ready to go. And then we can start overseeing them on site and giving them proper tuition in the ways of the company. But actually just getting your qualifications alone, that's great. But that doesn't mean you're a tree surgeon. You get Unit 41, well, good for you. You can rig down a tree. But it does not mean you should be rigging down trees day in, day out on your own. It's about learning from people who have that knowledge and they've done it for a good amount of time and they understand the industry as well. I mean, experience is so valuable in that. You're doing an inherently dangerous job. You need the confidence to do it. You need the people who have been there and done it before. You don't want to be trying this stuff out for the first time.
Definitely.
But if you do, you're going to find out.
So they're going to be like a third man in a team, essentially, learning with the experienced guys.
Yeah, and we might not. We don't know what we'll do about the daily targets and the totals and stuff, really. But we're just committed to bringing on sort of 3, 4, 5 new guys or girls, and just making sure we are doing everything we can to progress our current copper talent. We've got some fantastic guys working for us at the moment, and most of them are now through their kind of NPTCs and training. But actually, how do we further develop them? So how do we get them to go from second climber to team leader? What opportunities are coming up? One of the things I'm proudest about the company, we've seen a couple of guys, well, more than a couple, we've seen 5, 6, 7, 8 people come through our company and develop from very basic skills when they started to then going on to, second climber, team leader, estimator, operations manager. The industry being what it is, some of those guys are now traveling the world having a great time, but they might well come back to us because we've left on good terms. We keep in contact.
Yeah.
And actually, it's about having those relationships, isn't it? I'm still interested in what they're getting up to. There's so many photos from Vietnam and Australia. And we all share them in the group as well. And it's like, one of the guys will post and say, "Oh, there's Gerard's new climbing expedition in New Guinea."
And they will come back, because I've had it so many times before. As long as people don't burn their bridges, we've had people leave. We shook hands. Some people have gone because they thought the grass is greener. Some people have gone travelling and whatnot. And the amount of people that we've had come back and gone, actually, like, if I'm going to come back, I want to come back to HRG. And it's the same for, again, coming back to the culture thing. You have a good culture. We have had people that leave in blaze of glory and they'll never work for us again, because that's what, if they want to leave like that. But we always say to everyone, if you come and work for us and you're committed and you do well, and you have the kind of mindset that you're going to try and leave the business better than you found it by putting as much as you can in, we can shake hands when you leave, and then that always leaves it open for people to come back.
If you can be a good employer and a great leaver, that's a massive testament to you as a company owner. If you've got that culture where people, they're not frightened to talk to you. I mean, there's a time and a place. I mean, you don't call on Sunday night all the time, but if they go to their line manager and they're like, "Well, I've looked at this, and what can you do?" We don't mind that conversation. That's fine. We want people to be open about it. The worst thing is when they don't say anything, and the next thing they're just like, "Well, I'm going. Well, what can we do about that?" "Nothing. I'm going." It's like, okay, well, that's not so good, really.
It's that communication again, isn't it?
Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, you're a big advocate for culture and making a really positive work environment. And that is the only way I think you're going to succeed, actually. It's a necessity, but it's great that you embrace that. Because a lot of places sort of try and tinker around the edges a bit, and they're sort of, "Oh, we might do this." And a bit like you were saying, vouchers and stuff, they're a nice thing. But actually what people nearly always need is time. They need your kind of full attention when you give it to them as well. So if it is a one-to-one, if it is a meeting, do some prep for it, which I know you do. You prep for those conversations. You don't just go in there and wing it and go, "Let's see what happens." If someone's come to you and it's an appraisal, it's disciplinary, whatever. If you've got to do that, give it the time it deserves, because people pick up when you don't. If you don't give it time and energy to them, they're not going to give you much back. So what goes around comes around.
Definitely. So what do you see moving forward in the industry as some of the biggest challenges we've got coming up?
Oh, I don't know, really. I think I'm looking at them through the lens of the company most, really. I think recruitment, I think diversity in ours quite a bit of a blind spot for us. So we've got no diss on our company, but we've got nearly all men working on site.
Same.
Young white men. Actually, we're in Ealing in West London. That's an area of the world which is 50% black and Asian. I don't know what the blockers are to more people coming in to us, and I think it's something for us to work on. We're missing out on a huge pool of talented people there. We've been to the colleges and done a few conversations and presentations at Capel Manor. I think that the local one, they run the ARB anymore. You have to go up to North London North London campus. But I think people are getting into this industry of any background, but particularly Black and Asian, particularly women. Actually, how many female tree?
Yeah, we've had a couple come through, and we've had some really good ones. Part of the business, but again, it's in 16 years of trading. I think we've had 2 or 3, which is, and we've employed hundreds of people. So
physical thing either. We were kidding ourselves if we think, oh, we can't pick this. Well, you shouldn't be picking up massive piles of logs.
No, not now. When you've got Avance, mini loaders, 360s, all the kit out there. The mech is there to use, isn't it?
Whether you're probably can do it fine as well. It's just there's a whole new breed of very good young Instagram tree surgeons. I follow them all, and sometimes I send them a message and they come work for us. But there's a real urge to get the industry out there and get the climbing skills done. I just wish they'd show a bit more, less felling of trees. It's always felling, which is fascinating. But sometimes I'm like, that's a really nice oak tree.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that, isn't there?
There is, but I mean, I can't have a go really because they're showcasing what they do best, which is ropes, climbing, all that kind of really interesting kind of technical rigging, and I am interested in it. So I'm not. It's no disrespect to them. It's probably something I'd love to be able to do, but I'd love to just see probably, I don't know, when things fall over. We're felling it for that reason. It's dangerous. It's this. It's that. I always like it when they sort of say in the little bio below, they say this tree had to come down because a report said this and that. When it's just like, we just fell this tree. It's like, why'd you do that?
Definitely. So another thing that really struck me when we worked together, Tom, is that your dedication to help other people, because you also volunteer. Is that right?
I do.
So tell me a bit about that.
A couple of years now, I joined something called the Independent Monitoring Board. So we go into prisons and we make sure that prisons are being treated with fairness, dignity and respect. So it's not part of the prison, it's an independent body. So I go in, I'm actually on rota this week at the prison I'm attached to, and we go in and we do a rota report. We get applications from prisoners and making sure the prison are following the processes which they've got in place. And if you want to know about processes and tree surgery processes versus kind of civil service, Ministry of Justice and all that, I mean, prison's been going in their current form for like 200-300 years, so they are processed up to the maximum. So it was a different world for me, really, going from tree surgery, where it's very kind of like, it's a bit winging it, let's be honest, at times, to going into something where, no, to do that, you get that expense form, to do this, you do that, and then you've got to go and speak to this. It's very hierarchical. But no, it's been a really interesting couple of years for me, actually. I've got some really great colleagues. We've got a nice little team there, and we work to make sure that prisoners, like I say, have been treated with fairness and dignity, really. And we do that through all sorts of methods, like I say, a rota report. We go around and check things in the prison. It's monitoring, so it's not investigating. There's a big difference in that. Investigators tend to have power, like statutory power. They make recommendations, they make changes. Monitoring, you're kind of quite subtle change. You go in and you watch behaviours. You might just make a gentle comment quite a lot of the time. The whole point is we're independent, and like staff and prisoners, no one kind of fears us or anything, because we're not going to close anything down necessarily. But what we can do is have a chat with the governor once a month, who runs the whole prison, and he tends to answer our questions and get feedback and stuff. So you do see change, but it's quite subtle change. So it's taken quite a lot for me to get used to that. In my role as a company owner, if I want to do something, providing it's not really unreasonable, it can happen like very soon. I mean, you must know that. If you're like, I think we're going to have a day out on the 23rd.
Yeah, that would have changed. I mean, I remember when Sophie came from Norwich Union, big corporate business, and she came and worked in it, very small art business. It was 10 years ago, and she was just like, "Wow, I can literally come to you with something we want to do. The next day it's done."
Yeah.
When I worked in Norwich Union, it would take a year, and quite often it would get rejected. So it is a fast moving business when you want to, as you say, as an owner, just to, we want to make a change. Next day it's done, isn't it?
Which is lovely in many ways, but actually learning to slow down using the sort of Ministry of Justice kind of like the wheels and the way that works and stuff, and also again knowing when not to speak as well. I go to a lot of meetings and stuff, and you it's not your time to necessarily put your hand up in the middle of something. But no, it's been really good. I've done that for 2.5 years now. I get a lot of good training that bleeds over into management of people as well. So I'm very lucky with choosing that. We're just going to the shopping centre one day, and my wife said, and there was a board, like a volunteering board, and it was kind of Meals on Wheels or go and tidy up a garden for somebody and stuff, and all very valuable things. It said IMB and come and join us at this. And
what resonated about that for you?
do you know what? Probably most prisons are 95% male, young men with challenges, problems, all that sort of. They've had a different life, and there's bits of that which you can see with our workforce in terms of in the tree world, in the art world. There's people. Obviously, with a lot of neurodiversity, there's obviously a lot of people who've had completely different lives to me or you as well, whether it be tougher or whatever you want to call it. They've had a different course. So I thought I might be all right at talking to the guys in prison. It turns out I'm probably better at, because I'm 45 now, and they all look at me like a really old dad. I'm not the young guy that I thought I was. I thought they'd listen to me on some sort of wavelength and we'd understand each other. And now, actually, what they really want is, like you say, they want results. They want to be heard. They want to say, this isn't going right or whatever. What do I do about it? And they want to know what the answer is a lot of the time. So, yeah, it resonated, but probably because, and let's be honest, working in prisons is quite sexy as well, isn't it? Some people are like, oh, you work in prison. So I probably had a bit of that when I first started, because everyone's like, oh, that's really edgy and stuff. And the edge has gone for me now. It's been 2 years and I've done a lot of time there as well. Not in the same way as others, but I've done a lot of shifts there and stuff. But actually, for me, I really love it because you meet such a wide variety of people, people from all sorts of backgrounds, and staff included, can be really interesting. And just it's a different environment to work in criminal justice and stuff, and especially as a volunteer as well. So I'd recommend that sort of route. I know there's lots of opportunities now. Have you thought about doing much volunteering?
Yeah, and I've done it in the past. And one thing I realised after I lost it all is that, like, before I had, the business was huge, and I certainly wasn't a mega wealthy person, but we had a nice house, had a kit car, nice car, we had a camper van, went on lots of holidays, which was all great. But one thing I realised is that material things only give you so much joy for so long, and actually the feeling of helping people, it's one of the reasons why I do the mastermind. So it's a passion project over a business project, and it's because I love helping people, and it's the feeling that reoccurs. And I think with a fast car, you just want the next fast car. I got my nice new Audi at the beginning of the year. Now it's just a car. Like, it's lovely, but it gets me from A to B, just like any other car, right? So yeah, I've done some volunteering in the past cause my history was with drugs. I had such a bad relationship with alcohol and drugs. And again, I've met some amazing people who are just like me and you, or have been just like me or you. And quite often when we worked in a basically a factory that took in all of the rejected food from Morrison's, Tesco's, and then they redistribute it at a cut cost to all of the soup kitchens. So we did that, and then I got to work in some soup kitchens, and I got to meet most of these people who are drug addicts on the street, that people just generally go, look at that crackhead. They were just like me or you once. They had family, they had a life, they have an existence. And like with me losing it all, there was probably a time in that, and you said to me earlier about the resilience of getting through that. There was probably times where I didn't think I was, and the wrong misstep, and I relapsed on drugs and alcohol. I could have ended up just like one of those guys. And I think that just trying to realise that with that empathy to help people is something that you just can't replicate, that feeling of helping and giving back to a cause, to something that's doing good. Because yes, money will help us enjoy life, it will help get some nice things, but I think that doesn't give you the right purpose in life.
You're absolutely right, but I can say money doesn't matter, you don't need it and whatnot and stuff, but that's not true. You do need money, you need to be comfortable, and money, obviously, when you've got enough, is fine. The moment you haven't got it, you know about it, everything changes, the whole landscape changes, everything becomes a crisis because you haven't got enough money. So I'm very lucky in the last 5 or 6 years of the business being profitable, going well, probably just a bit of maturity as well. It sounds exactly the same for you in many ways. You've got to say, but money, it does matter. You don't want to be, if you're comfortable, then you're comfortable. But if you have got the time, and I was lucky a couple of years ago to go down to sort of 2-3 days a week, and that's why I did the volunteering role. And it was a good kind of reset for balance for life as well, because doing 6 days a week, thinking about work all day, caring only about work, it made me a really boring person, actually. I wasn't much fun. If all I can talk about is work, and so-and-so's done this, guess what's happened there? That job didn't get... I mean, nobody else wants to hear that. And my wife at the time, she's super patient. She's just like, why don't you do something else? Maybe it was a bit more like, you need to do something else. So I've been doing the volunteering, and you're absolutely right. It's meeting people from different walks of life. It's meeting a different world, seeing a different, but it's also appreciating little experiences as well. I've been on, sometimes people in prison, they get put in a segregation area where they're either been naughty, or they're either there for their own safety or all sorts of reasons. I saw a guy in a segregation review a while ago, and I sort of said to him, like, what would you, because they're boring. His prison's boring. You don't have TVs in segregation either. He said, I do origami. And I said, oh, can I have a look? And he asked the governor, and he said, oh, can I show him and stuff? And the governor was like, yeah, go and get it. So he came back in, and with just a piece of paper, like this piece of paper, he folds these most intricate kind of Japanese style Chinese birds and swans and stuff. I was just like, what the? You could sell this. And I was like, I mean, he had every diagnosis under the sun. He had a tough life, but he had skills as well. It's just like, there's got to be a way of channeling that away from drink, drugs.
That's what I've always thought about, like the drug addictions can be a superpower, because if you can channel that into the right place. But I think, like we talked about at the beginning of this, with the schooling system, society doesn't do well for those creative people or the addictive people, because it just kind of goes, you're broken, so you don't fit in this, and let's try to harness that and harness those and channel it into the right place. Right?
I don't know what his background was in terms of, was his mum and dad at home? Was it a tough? Of course, it was probably a tough life. He's ended up in prison. It's hard to get to prison, really. You've got to be pretty naughty to do that. It's just like, I thought, wow, he is a very skilled and talented guy. And what's happened there? He's still got those skills and talents. I had a few questions for you, actually.
Yeah,
do you mind?
Yeah, go for it.
It's basically around podcasting, actually. So I've done a bit of work background to this.
Yeah.
Listened to a few of your earlier fail forwards, and I picked out two of my favourite.
Yeah.
And I wonder what your two favourite are.
Okay.
Fail forward to. Why don't you tell me, and I'll see if I agree.
Oh wow, that's a good question.
Do you know, if I'm going to get you in trouble for saying this, don't say it.
No, you won't get me in trouble.
And anyone who's not a favourite will be like, why not?
I really like the one with Chris Shoeshrups, who was the mortgage broker. He was Dutch, and he had a really good story, and I really enjoyed.
He sounds Dutch, doesn't he?
Yeah, and a really good local entrepreneur in Southampton who has made some huge waves, and he owns a few pubs and restaurants.
A bit as well. You do.
Yeah, I do. And he was really great. We had really similar stories. So yeah, Chris, and I'm trying to think back. It feels like a lifetime ago, even though I stopped recently.
When I say this person's name, you'll be like, that was a good one.
Probably Chris Hawkins.
Yeah, that one of them.
Yeah,
because I like Chris Hawkins on Radio 6. I enjoy that as well. He's got a nice velvety voice. I really.
He has, and my sister loves Chris Hawkins. We listen to Radio 6. We're huge advocates. He approached me and said, "Hey, I've seen your podcast and I really like it, and I'd like to be on your podcast."
That's brilliant.
Yeah, he approached me, and I was like, "Cool, okay." I was like, "Possibly, I think so." Yeah, I think he got the wrong person, but I kind of asked him about it off air, thinking that he might have got it confused. And he was like, "No, I've listened to your podcast. I really like what you're doing."
Yeah, that must have been a tricky question to ask. Like, are you sure you want to?
Yeah. I kind of like, well, I was just saying it, going, "Oh, how did you find my podcast?" And like, because I just thought that maybe because we did hit some ranks and we hit the charts quite often, and I thought maybe he was just doing it for a bit of coverage. I enjoyed it. Was when I told my sister, she's a big music fan, she was like, "Oh wow!" So really nice. So who else?
Do you want another guess, or do you want me to just put you out of your misery?
Yeah, put me out of misery.
There's a lady called, I only heard it on the way to Bristol on Sunday.
Yes,
Keely Taverner.
Yes, Keely.
Me and my wife we couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, she was great.
She was raw, she was just honest, and there was a moment, you didn't do much talking actually.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have to.
No.
And I know there's rules about podcasting, it's like, don't talk for too long. I've probably done that today, 3
or 4 minutes. No, all good.
But she talked for probably about 5 or 6 minutes, and about in the middle of the podcast, and she got into this cadence and rhythm, and it was like poetry almost. I don't want to overdo it, but I was really like, she's got a rhythm going there. She knows what she's saying, her brain and everything is lining up.
And she was passionate. Obviously, receiving the life she'd received from narcissists and now helping other people. You could see that. About
that whole narcissism, empath thing as well.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that. I almost wanted to go and meet a narcissist just so I can get some help from her. I thought she was really insightful, really wise, and actually I thought you had a fantastic guest there.
Yeah.
I thought you did a great job as well, because the urge to jump in must be there quite a lot. You must kind of you've got your questions, or you've got your pitter patter, and where you're going to jump in and where you need to. You didn't have to jump in, and you let her talk.
Yeah, I just think it's just nice to let it flow. And I come with because when I've been interviewed on other podcasts, they kind of send you the questions sometimes first, and I've never been that structured. I mean, I'm not that structured kind of human being, but 3 or 4 questions can just open up the whole story, and then you just peel back the layers as you go on. And some people need the peeling back a bit more, and other people don't. And I think the beauty of podcasting is that it's a conversation. At the end of the day, it's just having a conversation, and everyone's got their own sort of unique stories, challenges, wins, lows.
Have you ever come away from a podcast and thought, I'm not happy with that stuff. You must have had some.
Yeah,
you don't have to name names.
No. There was one that it just felt it was really hard to get the flow. I've actually stopped one halfway through when I've been online at home, and the mobile or the Wi-Fi reception's been so bad for the person, and it's just been jittering around. But yeah, I mean, most of them were pretty fluid. So
yeah, if you've got the fundamentals right, if you haven't got the text not working, that must be super frustrating as well.
It is. Well, it's really nice for you coming in today to hear, because we do a lot of them online. I've got another 3 this week, and they're all online. But I much prefer doing it in person. I think it flows 100%. A lot nicer.
I mean, we do a lot of stuff online now with the company. Sometimes we have to do one-to-ones. We do a management meeting because everyone works remotely. I'd so much rather we have an office. Sometimes I'd love to have an office where we're all going to meet at 4 o'clock and have a chat, because it makes people. Well, it's not. I'm not going to compare it to kind of like Twitter or any of those things, but it's just more personal to have it face to face. People on tweets and texts and all that stuff, things can get misconstrued. And actually, if not face to face, it's one of those things where you see a lot of people. I don't know. You can get that whole. I don't know what X or whatever it's called these days. You can get some quite negative threads going on, and actually the reason is because those people aren't face to face. I'm not saying you have to do every message face to face, but it's quite easy to go down a bit of a rabbit warren.
Oh, definitely. I recently deleted all of my social media apps from my phone. I'm still on social media. I have to log into LinkedIn. I have to log into. Well, I was never great on Instagram. I think that should show my age. But I log into Facebook, but I just found that the narrative online at the moment is so negative with everyone's hating each other. You're either left or you're either right, or
you play a bit with fire though, because you look into ARB talk sometimes, don't you? It's just not bother.
Yeah, but I can't not when I'm trying to promote the master. That's the thing. So
I guess how negative is it? Is it so negative it outweighs the positivity of your promotion?
I've just learned to deal with it. I'm very thick-skinned. The resilience, and when the passion for me in the mastermind is so strong that a few negheads saying I'm a dickhead or whatever isn't going to get in my way, and it doesn't really offend me anymore. So I kind of actually get a bit disappointed when I don't get trolled anymore, because when I put a post up and no one comments,
it's a sign of endearment, isn't it?
Well, it is a sign of
endearment. Looking at you, they're actually thinking, "What's he saying about that? I might not like him, but I need to comment. I need to waste my time saying something nasty."
I didn't say this because it might sound quite arrogant me saying this, but my mentor said it to me, who helped me a lot with this, and he said, "Henry, when you're getting trolled and you're putting stuff out there, that's a very good sign that you're being seen by people and that you're doing some good things."
Any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, exactly that.
Are you still off social media then?
I just log on to Facebook every day to check the business owners group, which I run, and ARB talk and other stuff. But generally, I try and stay well clear of it, because I just find that it leads into negative patterns in your mind. And I think the thing is that everybody lives their best life online. If people were to follow me online, they'd think that I was the happiest guy in the world, that I've got everything made up, I've got the whole world going on. And I think from what I've seen is a lot of tree surgery businesses, a lot of businesses put out all their best stuff and they look like they've got the best business out there. But I know it from working on the mastermind and other people who have left me. I think every business looks better than it is from the outside. And when you're in the business, it's always better than it feels when you're in the middle of it. So, and I think it's easy to lead down into a negative kind of mental health when you're looking and watching what everyone else is doing and not just going, do you know what I need to do today is I need to work out how I improve myself by 1%. I need to work out to improve my business. Not looking at Tom Boswell Tree Service and going, wow, you're doing it really good and I'm doing it really crap, because it just leads into the wrong kind of emotion.
You're just doing it different. I mean, there's loads of stuff we need to do better, but we know we're doing the best we can at the moment. If you've got that constant goal of being better every day,
being better than you were the last week and you're in competition with yourself, not everyone else.
You are, and I've been on some of your masterminds as well, and they're really, anybody who comes on one of those masterminds is there to have a better life. They're there to make a better business. So they should all be applauded for doing that. They should all be applauded for making that step to go into a room of another bunch of guys you don't normally talk to, and might be your competition up the road. There might be someone, who's a bit like you, but they're 10 miles away, and actually they took this job. Well, you're there for the same purpose. You're there for improvement, really. And if you've got that as your shining beacon, you can't go far wrong with that. So it's a big credit to you, the mastermind, actually. We were with it for a year and we've had a lot of benefit from it. So it's really nice to see it from going from strength to strength as well. So congratulations with that.
Good, thank you. No, it's good to have you guys part of it. As I say, the culture and everything that you guys have produced is really cool.
I had a few more questions if you want. Let me just quickly look through this 1 second. Oh, there it was. What podcasters do you look to for inspiration then?
The main one at the moment I'm listening to is Alex Hormozy. He's an American guy, ran a business called Gym Launch, sold out for 100 million. Now does a podcast. It's not a mentorship podcast in the sense that he's not trying to sell anything out the back of it. He's got a business called acquisition.com. He's trying to buy businesses from people. So what his ethos is, I'm going to put loads of free content out there and I'm going to hopefully help other businesses grow, and then we can do deals together in the future.
Yeah.
And what I like about him, he's just an American guy, no nonsense, but it's really inspiring and really great value. I dip in and out of Stephen Bartlett's podcast.
Yeah.
Like some of his episodes are great. Some of it I think there's a bit of an agenda to sell products that he's involved in.
Yeah.
But actually there's been some great ones on there. And that's really the main two. And then I listen to audiobooks quite often. I then reaffirm different books that I've read. I'll read a book, and if I like it, I'll buy an audio.
Yeah.
And then I'll listen on certain drives, I listen to them just to reaffirm certain
What
chapters.
What are you listening to on Audible at the moment, audiobooks?
5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Okay.
It's a great book. If you're trying to build a team build, we're currently working on the contents of that with the team, and something that I'm also going to be bringing forward to the guys in the mastermind.
Yeah.
Essentially, in a nutshell, it's about the five steps to having a functional team, not a dysfunctional team. And one of the main things is trust.
Yeah.
It's the bottom part of it, because we as a team members, we need to all trust each other, that we can have awkward and normal conversations, that we can pull each other to one side and have a conversation, say like, I don't really like what you're doing here, but or can tell me more about that, and actually we need to do this.
Yeah.
Or if me as the leader of the company goes, right, I've got this new idea, that Mike can go, hang on a minute, Henry, have you thought about X, Y, Z? And I don't just jump down his throat.
Yeah.
We then have an open conversation. So,
Safe space, if you will.
Yeah, safe space for us to be able to debate. And we might not always agree on everything, but at least we debate it out, and then we then all go agree on the solution at the end of it.
Yeah, well, that's a really good way to look at it, actually. So that's your podcast, Audible you're listening to at the moment, yeah? Do you listen to any non-business stuff?
Just talk sport. I'm a massive football fan. If I'm not at work and I'm not spending time with family, football's my life. It's my thing. It always has been.
Is that a driving thing, or is that do you walk the dog or something? Or
there's just a bit of both. Sometimes it's either that, or I love drum and bass as well. I love music. Yeah. So when I'm driving, it will be a mixture of audiobooks, podcasts, talk sport, or if I start getting tired, drum and bass.
You must be
loud.
when you get to those quotes.
Oh yeah, my right foot goes a bit heavier when the drum and bass comes on.
£9,000.
So yeah.
Oh, good. Well, do you know what? Having something to listen to, actually, I do occasionally enjoy my dog walk every evening, because we've got a Labrador retriever, so I go for a walk every night with the dog. And that's a really good time to reflect on conversations, actually.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I'll go and walk around the woods or whatever, or we do our local pond and stuff, and I'll just be thinking about, oh, did I say that? Why did I get that wrong? What would I do differently? So I've got this little internal monologue. If I want to just switch off a bit, then I do Audible a fair bit as well. I had a couple of recommendations if you want.
Yeah,
actually.
Go for it.
You probably, I heard Keely Taverner mention this as well, but The Chimp Paradox is obviously a big favourite.
Great book.
I'd recommend that to anyone. I read that about 4 or 5 years ago. Did me a lot of good, actually.
That changed me from being an aggressive man to a very... It did, because aggressive with how I dealt with certain situations, just even things like road rage and stuff. Hearing that in a chimp, it was a huge wake up, that book.
Oh, you've got to worry about your life if you're getting road rage. You've really got to just stop and I'm going from A to B. Yeah, I'm getting so worked up by this.
It was stressful driving places when you got that.
What's the reason behind that is what you got, and I'm sure you have thought about it, but it's like, there's no way that's normal to get so worked up about something so much. You're just going from A to B, no one's crashed, no one's died, just chill.
Yeah, definitely.
There was one more, actually, which is a big favourite of mine. I looked it up the other day. It's called How to Be Heard by Julian Treasure. So it's all a book about acoustics, about noise, about how we interpret noise, but it's also about how we communicate as well. So I'd like to any of your listeners, because that was really helpful about bringing a bit of calmness to conversations and bringing a bit. It kind of works hand in glove with Chimp Paradox, actually, in many ways, because it's teaching those tools to kind of not be bombarded with noise. Noise is everywhere all the time, isn't it? It's a noisy world out there with social media, with noise of appliances and machines and all sorts of stuff going on, and actually finding a bit of time. So going back to my dog walk, walking around a pond with nothing but a dog for company is brilliant. That's how I'd recommend to do that.
Yeah, so, nice to process things. Love it.
And that was my questions, actually. That's pretty much it.
Fabulous. Well, it's been really great having you on the podcast. If people want to follow you and your company journey, where's the best place to follow you?
Best place, go to our website, www.tomboswelltrees.com, or our Instagram handle, TBTS London, and I could give you numbers out as well, but actually just follow us on the website.
Perfect. Yeah, ideal.
Maybe put a link in the bio or something
Yeah, I'll put the links in the bio for everyone. So thank you everyone for listening in today. I really enjoyed this podcast with Tom. If you've enjoyed it, please share it, like it and subscribe, and there'll be plenty more coming up in the future. Thanks everyone. Thanks Tom.